children aren't actually impacted by divorce. They're impacted by the conflict in divorce. And when they're caught in the middle, they take it on as their fault. It's very sad.
What's the best way to help someone through a divorce who is struggling because of a challenging or difficult spouse?
I tend to see two areas where this happens. The first is when a client has incredible fear and they just stop and don't want to move forward. And finding and understanding, helping them understand what the fear is. I had one client that was terrified she was going to become destitute at the end of her divorce. And when we sat down and we did a budget and we looked at all the assets and the income, and she realized that it was an unfounded fear, then she was able to say, okay, now I get it, I'm ready to move forward. Okay. The other situation, which can be a little more challenging, is someone who is divorcing a partner who is very vengeful and angry and will look for any reason whatsoever to prolong the agony. And in that situation, it's sort of, the work is really, what are the consequences of staying in this process for a long time? You know, how are you going to behave every day? How is it going to affect your children? Your life is going to be in limbo. I mean, what are the consequences of sort of accepting, even if it's something that to you is completely unreasonable, but it gives you the opportunity to move on with your life?
And you know, it's so easy. Those kinds of people really get your goat, right? Yeah. I mean, and they know how to hit your hot buttons. And so it's really important that instead of, you know, having that emotional reaction, that you begin to get present to the patterns, right? Because you want to be able to talk to someone about the patterns of behavior rather than how angry and how upset and how frustrated you are. Because, you know, that's the only way to build your case, is by looking at what are these patterns.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, divorce is hard enough in the best of circumstances. And then when you add a spouse that's turning the process into a war, that becomes very challenging, awful. And I find the work is in building resilience and boundaries, setting boundaries, so that you don't engage in some of these battles that they're proposing, or you don't ignite a new one. Yeah. And with that strength, then you start to be able to communicate so that you can pick your battles and let some go, but fight for the ones that really matter. And if all else fails and you end up in court, your attorney can say, my client has been trying to turn this war into a process and they need your help.
Yeah, I always say walk quietly and carry a big stick.
Yep. So, somebody else said that, didn't they?
Right. So it's really important to speak, because I deal with this a lot with my clients. It's so important, and it's a magic in a sense, to speak to your spouse's best self. Because understand they're in fear too. So when we speak to their best self and we speak to the future we want for them as well, not just ours, it can dissipate a lot of the heat and the anxiety around it. And then to maintain that attitude is really important as well, so that they end up really believing you. And it's interesting because you can build more trust even during divorce than you have had in the last several years of your marriage, because you're actually going through something very difficult in a way that you're taking care of each other. So it is possible to turn it around.
And speak to that more for a second. How important is building that trust when you have kids? Because now you're going into this whole new co-parenting situation. Like, if you do your divorce well, do you co-parent well as a result?
Well, yes. I mean, obviously we have more agreement around things, shared time together, how old they are, you know, where they're going to go to college, how that's all going to happen. You know, so there are experts that can also help with that specifically. I tend to hand that particular question off to others' kids. I don't have children, so I don't pretend to.
I think it also helps in how you behave towards your children when, you know, when there's a lot of anger. Unfortunately, it tends to come out in front of the children. And, you know, the best thing you can do is to try not to express your strong emotions over your spouse in front of your children. So to the extent that you can find a way to communicate with your spouse on some level, the better it will be for your children. Yeah. And that's regardless of the age, I will say, as well.
Children aren't actually impacted by divorce. They're impacted by the conflict in divorce. And when they're caught in the middle, they take it on as their fault. It's very sad.
If you're watching and you're dealing with a really difficult spouse, these gals can certainly help you. Give yourself a moment to pause, listen to how you're responding to your spouse, and think about how you want to make the next steps moving forward. Listen to what these gals have to say and reach out if you need help.